Motorola makes great phones. Every year their X line just gets better and better. And even last year's Droid Turbo was my favorite phone. But one thing Motorola lacks is in the camera department. Motorola promised a better camera for the X. Is this really the case? Well, I'm Kevin the Tech Ninja, and let's find out. The Moto X Pure has a 21 megapixel camera on board, but megapixels only really mean how large these photos are, and really doesn't mean that they're much better. The Moto X Pure camera software is the same standard software from the past. It's a tap to shoot camera, so you tap what you want it to focus on, and it shoots. It's a system that has worked for Motorola for the most part, and they're sticking with it. Now, there are a few additional options like auto HDR, auto flash panorama, and also exposure compensation. But beyond that, it leaves the gimmicks and all that other stuff for Samsung and the others. And this is really just a no-frills type of camera. Firstly, the camera takes some really solid photos in most conditions, and I think the light diffusing is one of the reasons we see these really good images. An example here is with this image taken with the S6. Do you notice how the light in the background is spilling out this window? The Moto X image was taken in the same condition probably 10 seconds later, and yet the light does not spill out. However, it doesn't bring in a ton of light as well, especially when taking selfies. A lot of my front-facing images are a bit dimmer than expected. And guys, look, before you start making fun of me for taking selfies, I'm really testing this camera out the way that most people take it. A really fun statistic was ran that 70% of photos taken on smartphones are actually selfies. So I am going to talk about the front-facing camera a lot. To compensate for this issue, they added a flash on the front-facing camera, which to me sounds like a terrible idea. Why? Well, it's simply too much light. The light is thrown into your face, half blinding you, and you also end up with a very bright face and dim everything else. In no conditions, I could take a selfie with the flash on that actually looked pretty good. The front-facing camera also does a great job with dynamic range. Taking selfies outside seems to be very natural, and it gives you a pretty clean image. Alright, let's take a look at the back-facing shooter. This is a 21 megapixel camera. Also, if you have a steady hand and HDR is on, and you adjust the exposure, you can lead yourself to a very nice shot. However, the camera does not have optic stabilization, so I found myself having to lean on an object or use my fiance for a tripod to land a good shot in lower light. So if you're unable to keep your hand steady and you have a longer shutter and lower light images, you end up with a blurry image like this. Exposure compensation is found right in the shooting menu, and this lets you adjust exposure right before you take the shot. And this is an option I recommend turning on. Now, I usually dim the photo just a tiny bit before taking a photo, and I felt doing that my images looked a bit better. You can also tap and hold to take burst fires, which works really well. Now guys, just to give you a heads up, in all these comparisons, I had the camera on auto with auto HDR turned on. Also, capturing moving objects on the X is an interesting task in itself. Doing tap to shoot is really tough because you tap, it focuses, and it shoots. So a lot of times when action happens, well, it makes it very tough to take that picture. So I found myself having to do burst fire and praying that I got one good image out of it. I found the camera of the Moto X Pure to have deeply saturated colors, which at times can look really good. However, at times, I find that it crushes images down to the point where it actually loses what the image looked like originally. Videos look really good, and it does a great job at keeping up with most cameras out there. 4K video, well, not used by many, is still something to see. Now here's some 4K footage examples. I'll let you decide on the rest. Once we take things indoors, it becomes dim and also noisy, but that's pretty expected. Overall, the video quality is fantastic. Feel free to take it out to the ballpark or take it to any type of event or anything you do. It looks really good. I think the big takeaway is pretty simple. Companies that pay camera people to build software for their phones are the ones that are truly winning. Companies that are using phone people to build camera software, well, that's where you find these issues. The Moto X Pure is still using Google's firmware for camera. Although they made changes on top of it, it's still mostly Google's code from what I see. Although these cameras are catching up to the big players, there is still a significant gap between them. As always guys, this is Kevin the Tech Ninja. If you liked the video, hit me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more great videos. and giveaways. And stay tuned for more Moto X 2015 Pure coverage. Peace.